Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Tom Smith. I am the director of the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society in the U.S., and it is my very, very proud position to be in here today to welcome an excellent guest, a friend and colleague based over in Scotland. And I'm going to bring him on in just a second. We're in the midst of our festival season, and we're almost at the climax here, which is tomorrow, and the release of our Islay Festival bottlings. It's been a great couple weeks. We started off in the space side with 95.46 and 63.72. Then we went to Campbelltown last Thursday for cask 93.153. The lottery is underway for that. I see members are scooping those up, so that's fantastic. And yesterday we had cask 78.42 released. There are still some bottles of that. A sensational Highland from the Highland cask from the Western Highlands, and a really, really rare cask. And today we continue. One of the bottlings we will be releasing tomorrow is a little different from the other ones, and we thought it would be fun to unveil it, and not only unveil it to you guys a little early, but to do so with the person who created it. This is a really fun cask that we are going to get to in just a few minutes. But you know, the gentleman I'm about to bring on is really the shepherd of so many of our amazing single casks, as well as limited blended bottlings, and now that we're starting to see pop up in the outturns from month to month, vatted casks or married single casks together. So, and this fella is responsible for all of it, and he really is the gatekeeper to decide which casks are going to go to our tasting panel and eventually be approved for the members around not only the U.S. but globally. And yeah, I mean, so many tremendous tastings we've done, and really all thanks to this guy. So let's bring him on without any further ado, Mr. Euan Campbell. Euan, welcome. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you, man?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thanks for such a warm introduction. That was fantastic.
Well, I meant every word, I promise. So how's everything over in Scotland? I see it. So it's 7 p.m. Still plenty of daylight streaming through your window. So
yeah,
how's the weather over there? Yeah,
it's beautiful, actually. I'm just back from a walk in the park, the Daily Constitutional. Nice. I live just next to one of the main parks in Edinburgh, where we have kind of volcanic mini mountains. So that's a pretty cool way to spend the afternoon after work.
So when you take your afternoon walk, do you have a hip flask just in case?
Not necessarily on a Wednesday, but
okay, all right, fair enough.
It has been known on occasion, certainly. Yeah.
Very nice, very cool. Well, listen, I have a ton of questions for you, and we have a really beautiful whiskey to get into. But I just want to turn my attention to the chat real quick and just welcome some folks. Mr. Brian McCoy out in Seattle. How you doing? First in the chat. I guess we mentioned that. So thanks for showing up early there, Brian. We got Tim from San Francisco. So we have Northern California and Southern California, Vesper Tiger, joining us. Matt Ryan, always great to see you, sir, out in New Jersey. Christy from Central Oregon. We have Shalom here from Saratoga, up in upstate New York. Denver, Colorado, and Jose. We have some Tennessee. We have some Austin. So we are all over the map, as always. It's great to have you guys here. And I have a few questions for Euan. If you guys have questions for Euan, please let us know in the chat here. I will do my best to get to those. If I happen to pass over it because I'm still kind of new at this whole thing, I will certainly make sure that question to Euan is posed after the stream, and get you an answer. Okay. So thanks for coming, guys. And I know it's 2:00 in New York right now, 11 a.m. I think a fine time on the West Coast to pour a dram. If you guys are interested in pouring a dram, please tell us what you're drinking. It'd be great to hear. So Euan, thanks again for joining us. And I think maybe probably the best place to start is your start in whiskey. Talk to us about your whiskey journey, how you got into the industry, and how you've ended up in the position you are with the society.
Sure. Well, I caught the whiskey bug at quite a young age. I remember trying a dram of Distillery 29 with my father when I must have been about 16. And I was just thinking, this is completely out there. It's not at all what I had understood whiskey to be as a youngster. So that kind of got me started on the journey. My dad actually worked at Distillery 105 when I was born, so I kind of have all these cool pictures of me as a 2-year-old standing next to casks that are like kind of twice the height of me. So it's always kind of been a family interest as well. Then when I was working at university, when I was at university in between terms, I was lucky enough to land a job in a local whiskey shop. And we had, we stocked maybe over 200 different malts. So I spent a few years surrounded by all these different expressions and books by the likes of Michael Jackson and of course, our very own Pip Hills, the founder of the society. Nice. So I kind of, learned a lot more about it and just got further and further down the rabbit hole sort of thing. When I graduated in 2008, I moved up to Edinburgh and started working at the Vaults, the spiritual home of the society, as a barman. And, I've done everything at the society from being an ambassador and hosting tastings. I also ran our UK-wide tastings program. I was in our events team, so I've organised people's birthdays and weddings all across our society venues. And since 2013, I've been focused in the whiskey and spirit side of things. And today my job title is spirits manager.
Wow, nice, man. That's cool. My first dram was a little later. It was graduating college. My first single malt, I should say, was a Distillery number 2 18-year-old with my dad. Who actually no, so sorry, Dad. I shortchanged you there. He bought the 20. I want to say 25 year. So so that was mine. I mean, 29 is a cool way to start for sure.
It is kind of nice. In at the deep end, maybe.
Right, for sure. So, so you're now spirits manager. You've been in that role since 2013. So, what does spirits manager encompass? What is, maybe take us through maybe a top line view or more of day-to-day operations? Maybe bullet point the most important aspects of what you're doing to curate these whiskeys.
Okay, well, yesterday is quite a good example, actually. I went out to our warehouse on the outskirts of Glasgow with the great task of nosing, I think it was 102 fresh sherry casks that had just landed at the warehouse. So they will be used for fillings and additional maturation. So basically, the drill is go down to the warehouse and they're all laid out. The warehouse team kind of pop the bungs and you go along and sniff them all, just checking that they're all, that beautiful oxidative Oloroso clean sherry that you're after. And then on the train on the way back, I was dealing with a couple of different distilleries and a cooperage and a logistics, a haulier, trying to get casks delivered in for fillings, which actually happened today. Then when I got back home, because I'm still working from home, in the office maybe one day a week now, I spent the rest of the afternoon looking at samples to go to the tasting panel and also working a little bit on recipe development for future blends. So there's a great mixture of organizational and logistic side of things, as well as the fun sensory and tasting and creating side of things as well.
Nice. So both sides of the brain working full steam every day, basically.
100% on each side. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh, very interesting. So you talked about certain things coming down the pipeline. So I don't want to tease these guys out too much. So I know everyone's here to listen to our discussion, but also to figure out what this great Islay surprise is. So let me turn back the clock to 2020, Islay Festival release. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people on the website at the same time. And a lot of folks, as with every release from the Society, oftentimes somebody misses out. And we've been working hard to kind of address that through a few different things. First of all, the lottery, but also secondly, the amount of whiskey per bottling that we're able to offer to our members. So while the other releases for tomorrow are single casks, we certainly have a rather different single cask here in front of me. And I'd like to introduce it now. So in the spirit of spreading as much Islay love as we can, Euan set about last year in vatting or marrying different casks from the same distillery. So this is a single malt Scotch. However, the resultant whiskey can stretch so much farther. So this, I think, is a beautiful way to address getting more bottles to more members around the country. And without further ado, I told you, Euan, I'm terrible at this. Oh boy. This is one of the casks that will be released tomorrow. Let me try and focus that top line for you. Can you guys read that a little bit? Distillery number 10, small batch release. This is entitled Smoky Maritime Hit. Here you have a beautiful looking lobster there with a little bit of espresso and a bandage. And this is in celebration of the Islay Whiskey Festival 2021. So yeah, drink that in, guys. We're going to drink this in just a minute. But yeah, let me get my little ticker up here so you guys can have this information right in front of you. This is an outturn. So typically, what's an average outturn from a cask? You in about 225
225,
or so?
250, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But when we take a few of those casks and put them together, we come out with 932 bottles. So hundreds of bottles for our members to enjoy. And yeah, this is a really freaking cool whiskey. So Euan, you created this for us. This vatting was specifically for the U.S. chapter, correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So
All
you're
right.
the only guys that have this whiskey.
Nice.
So yeah, just a few points about it, I guess, is it's the heavily peated spirit that's produced at this distillery. Distillery 10. I think they only do about 6 weeks or so worth of production of this, or at least the last time I heard that was the frequency of it. So it's quite rare. It's bottled at natural strength, so there is no dilution for this one. And it's called Smoky Maritime Hit. It had previously been matured for 5 years in recharred hogsheads. So that's bourbon hogsheads that have been used in the whiskey industry for a period of, could be a number of decades actually. And then they're sent to the cooperage. They go through a process called rechar. It kind of scrapes the old char layer off, puts a new one on. And what you get is an active layer of char, but not a very active layer of wood underneath, which is quite good for a peated spirit because you get this char interaction where it's kind of cleaning up the new make and helping it to mature, but you're not getting too much oak extraction, and oak extraction can actually reduce your perception of the smoky character in a whiskey. But then for the last 2 years, this was put into second fill Oloroso hogsheads. So you can see it's got this lovely kind of dark amber color, pretty active.
Oloroso
for
Oloroso or PX?
We have
PX on ours, yeah.
You do. Apologies. Yeah, there is one other batch of this that's available elsewhere in the world that has PX Oloroso and Rechar. So yeah, apologies. This is just PX, which I guess that's explains the kind of the dark, sweet, fruity nature of it. There's an interesting story behind these hogsheads as well, that I haven't really mentioned to anyone, but the history of these is quite interesting. They were previously used for a couple of years to mature distillery 125, and they were also sherry butts that I had sent to Speyside Cooperage, and they chopped them down and recoopered them into hogsheads for us for this particular project. So just a kind of weird, interesting backstory to these. That's not an operation that we've done very often, but pretty effective in this case.
So the barrels, I can't keep my train of thought, sadly, smelling this whiskey. God, I mean, so the barrels held 125 liquid.
Yeah, then, for a couple of years. Yeah,
for a couple of years. Then you sent them to Speyside Cooperage, broke them down, and rebuilt them into hoggies.
Yeah.
Any sort of interaction between the 125 juice and the wood that carries over into the hogshead, even through that breaking down and recrafting?
Probably not. But I mean, my thinking was that the 125 has had a couple of years of quite intense maturation in a first fill, and if you mature in smaller casks, you get a bit of a more intense maturation. So my thought was, well, these are second fill butts, and they might actually, you could leave them at the coast for another decade if you wanted. But I wanted to see what would happen if you made them, half the size of them into hogsheads, 250 litre capacity. And then, I think it has worked. It's given a bit of a more intense whack of that sherry cask to the finished whiskey. But I mean, I guess you can tell from the lobster on the label that this is a lovely kind of combination of really foody stuff, really smoky stuff like barbecue-y, hickory kind of things, and then the medicinal side that you would expect from a peated Islay whiskey as well.
Yeah, can we dive in? Can you give me specifics? What are you nosing here?
I definitely get this like sweet hickory, barbecue burnt ends kind of stuff with a lovely sticky barbecue glaze.
Oh, you're speaking my language. You're speaking my language, man. Oh,
I'm
that's great.
Getting hungry.
Yeah, you have spent some time in Kentucky, so you know what's up with the good barbecue.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But it kind of goes as well. Oh, sorry, Tom. On you go.
I was just going to say, I absolutely get that hickory smoked loveliness. Some really nice kind of darker, kind of like dark caramel underneath a beautiful veil of smoke. Very nice, clean.
Yeah, there's quite a kind of soy sauce, teriyaki stuff going on as well. And it's a real foodie dram. I think that would just be perfect with lots of big smoky barbecue.
Oh yeah.
Shall we have a taste?
That's incredible. Please, slunge.
Flange. Ooh. It's a beast. Wow.
Holy moly. Wow, that's a mouthful, man.
There's like echoes of flavor, just constant. Yeah, nice. There's a kind of there's a nice sort of floral hint in it as well, like a burning heather kind of thing that, imagine a mountainside on fire or something.
Yeah. Some controlled burns.
Yeah, or maybe like a dragon is flying over, scorching the hillside.
Yes, please. That would be awesome.
Something like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It's just like an orchestra. It like just booms in the beginning and it just keeps coming in waves throughout the entire palette. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I mean, 7 years old. Obviously, it has that youthfulness, and it has that kind of higher. Although for 7 years old, 59 is not crazy for an ABV. We might expect something along the lines of 62 or 64%. But wow, I mean, the intensity, the flavor intensity is fantastic, and it seems to me very concentrated for not really having spent that much time maturing.
Yeah, I think speaking, as well, at that younger age, the smoke remains really, really dominant. If you taste peated whiskies, even peated to this level, that mature for say like 15, 18 years plus, they become a different animal, I think, and you get a lot more fruity stuff coming through from the cask, and the smoke just starts to take a bit of a backseat. But yeah, in this case, it's pretty full on the sherry side and full on the smoke side, which are, a bit of a match made in heaven, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andrew Mangrum is asking if we know the ppms of this spirit. I think traditionally distillery number 10 is their specs are somewhere around 35 to 45 parts per million, if I recall.
I think that's about where it fits in. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think they've produced a number of different peated ones over the years as well. They kind of vary. So I believe that they're still producing this one now. So yeah, I would say it's 35 to 40, but I would need to kind of look that up for reference.
Well, it really comes through regardless of the ppms, because they can be funny sometimes. What's the reading that's going into the spirit doesn't always manifest itself, on the other end. And it can be a very high ppm where you're not getting so many, especially in longer maturations. Whereas a lighter ppm, like for instance, Distillery 93 comes to mind for me, where typically very low, but sometimes that really just comes out in a rather intense way.
It's kind of to do with the distillation process as well. So you could have a very heavily peated barley, but if you take quite a high cut, you're gonna a lot of the phenols come close to the end of the distillation run. So if you cut too high, you can end up slicing all of that good smokiness that you had in the barley. So it's really to do with the stills and where they take the cut and how they run that distillation. Not so much to do with how peated the barley itself is.
Right. Okay. Great point. And for those of you who may not be familiar, when Euan's talking about the cut, we're talking about the heads, the hearts, and the tails. Or in Scotland, they'll say the foreshots and the feints. So cutting from you're cutting the heads out, and then you're keeping the heart of that whiskey run. So depending on where you make that transition, you're going to get a slightly different spirit in the end, even from the same distillery. So you could be cutting very high or a little further along, and get a very, very different spirit from the same place. There is Shalom. There is not a 1 bottle limit on this whiskey tomorrow. There will be a 2 bottle limit because we have 900 to throw around. We thought it might be nice to let members grab one for themselves and one for a very good friend. So it will be a 2 bottle limit tomorrow to Distillery 10 small batch.
Man, that's incredibly generous of you, Tom.
Well, thank you. You know, I do my best to please the masses, Ewan. And I mean, I thought long and hard about doing a one bottle limit, but I feel like this is probably too good to not share a little more. But yeah, it's wow. This is. I mean, cheers to you, man. Thanks for making us a killer composition here, because this is really. So you we'll get to this in a little bit too, but you created the tar pit. So I might venture to say that this could be like a tar pit-esque expression on a serious regimen of steroids. How far off am I?
No, I think you're pretty close there. You've got the salty, smoky, almost kind of nuttiness as well that's in there, mixed with the sherry. So yeah, it's really similar. Albeit I think tar pit is 11 years old, so a little bit softer on the peat maybe, but it's a really similar style. And that's kind of, you know, the flavor profiles serve as quite a good inspiration for us for the heresy range, or you know, these sort of small batch blended malts that we're doing. So yeah, generally you'd kind of go, where do I want to land, or what's a whiskey that I've tried that I really like? What's the inspiration? And then we look at our cask stocks and try and figure out what might match, and typically do a kind of iterative recipe process. So for some of them, you know, we've done maybe 15 different recipes to try and arrive at our favorite one. So it's a labor of love.
Well, I mean, thank you very much for putting in that kind of time. You know, it's really incredible to me that so much goes into one of these blends. You know, I mean, probably I take it for granted. You know, when I receive the blend, it's in the bottle, it's ready to go, and I watch it these days move out the door very, very quickly. But so much work that went into that that bottling, you know, to get everything just right, as far as composition, as far as proofing, and that sort of thing. It's an incredible amount of work, and it's all very fleeting, right? I mean, if you're working for a big drinks company and you make a killer blend, you know, you're then making that blend for the next how many years? You know, several years, and I guess more of the challenge is to make that original profile consistent throughout those several years. But with these, you put all that love into one expression, and then it's gone, and I guess you just move on. So I imagine you must enjoy a bit the sort of never-ending adventure that's putting these different blends together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that range is very much viewed through our single cask lens. So we're just trying to create something unique and special with the story. And once that particular expression is gone, it's gone. So yeah, I mean, blending for consistency, like some of the larger companies do, is a huge skill. But this is sort of a different take on it, where we're able to be really creative and sort of free, and we're just trying to do this kind of one-off small batch. I mean, you say it's a lot of work, but it's also a hell of a lot of fun. So it kind of doesn't feel like work. And then especially when you can sit down and enjoy a dram out of the bottle once it's all done. I quite often don't feel like something is real until I've got a bottle at home, I've cracked the cork on it, and I'm sipping it from the glass, and I'm like, okay, project is now done, because that enjoying it in the armchair is the last step, really.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about popping these bottles and enjoying these bottles, you know, in several different occasions, you know, after work, in an armchair dram before bed, or hopefully with a lot of friends in the coming months. And hopefully for our members watching, at the Vaults and Queen Street and our venues in Glasgow and London as well. You know, hopefully that's all in the very, very near future. Things are starting to open up a little bit in the US, and we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope the same goes for you over there.
Yeah.
But
yeah, things are looking positive, and the
Good.
venues are now open, with the exception of Glasgow, I think, but that will be very soon, hopefully.
Oh, great!
But yeah,
great news.
Great to see people again. Great to see our members again, and we've got so much whiskey, so many exciting casks coming out. It's that kind of never-ending journey that we can take you on.
We really do, and I, obviously I have a longer range view than just about anybody else in the U.S. as far as what we're receiving. So that's a really fun position to be in, and to see what's coming down the pipeline. And I got to tell you, man, you guys have been making some fun moves to create some amazing spirits for the members in the U.S. So and elsewhere around the world. We are a global community. Of course, my job is to look after the Americans, but yeah, it's really exciting stuff. And we're going to touch a bit more on that. We've already kind of started touching on things like that. But as we go on. Euan, I'm already done with my dram. What happened here? I had a pretty healthy pour. I mean, it was more like 2 fingers. It wasn't 2 fingers, but still, it's gone. So I'm going to re-up and...
yeah, good idea.
Yeah, show everybody the lobster again. Maybe I can get it right. Boom. Oh, see? I just need a dram in me. Then I'm I'm a placement genius here. So I'm going to... Yeah. I'm going to re-up and maybe dilute a little bit. What do you think? Does that make sense?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Oh, goodness. You guys just watched me spill my whiskey all over myself on live TV. All right, awesome. Well, the cleaning lady is going to have a really fun time. And good thing I'm not getting into a car later today because my pants are now soaked with cask strength whiskey. Smells really amazing, I'll be honest. So here we go. Let me just give one more nose neat. Oh man, that's good. Yeah, and I know I think you prefer to just kind of pour it in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm still on the dropper, I'm still doing the dropper. And actually with this, I poured a lot of whiskey, so there's more whiskey in the glass than there is on my pants.
Each to their own. I think that's
right.
the key. No, I'm not going to tell you how to enjoy your whiskey.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, everyone can just do what they want.
Sure. I mean, but there is certainly a way to taste whiskey in a professional setting, specifically in the context of the tasting panel, which we might be able to touch on as well. But now that I'm fully drenched in beautiful Islay malt, I'm going to go in for a reduced nose here. Ooh. So somebody kind of just like poured a little water on those hickory embers.
Yeah.
It's still there for sure.
It's reminding me of having a peaty dram on the beach on Islay in the rain.
In the rain.
In the rain specifically.
Sturdy Scottish rain.
Yeah. You've got to have that. You've got that kind of salty air, the ozone, the seashells, and maybe that kind of smell that you get from rain or just before. It's quite evocative.
Now, one of my favorite terms, as Ben will always be very quick to point out, is petrichor. Are we getting a little bit of petrichor there, or is that different when you're on the sea?
No. I think we're getting that for sure. Yeah. Maybe there's a little tarmac road running that we drove to the beach down, that you get a little bit that kind of hot, rainy tarmac smell. But I think it's about the whole context. It's about everything around. It's all the kind of flowers and everything that kind of just gets awakened by a good rain shower.
Yeah. Wow. The nose is certainly more subdued, as I would imagine. Still a lot of beautiful smoke coming through. The palate is just like smoky dessert. It's really lovely, and I'm getting a bit more of those floral accents you're talking about as well. Wow, that's
I'm just looking at some of the notes that the tasting panel got. A Reuben sandwich. I love a Reuben sandwich. You've got that kind of peppery pastrami, that lovely, that tasty pepperiness to it, savouriness. We've also got them sweet rum-soaked Jamaican ginger cake. And I think my favourite part of this whole note is a, in inverted commas, it says phenol espresso.
Yeah, I actually, while this is a celebratory label, and I'll try not to spill anymore, God, it's a crime, and it does not include a bottle note. There was still a bottle note logged by the tasting panel, so I'm actually just going to throw that up there right now, so you can at least read an abbreviated description by our tasting panel. And that's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. I mean, the smokiness is still very, very intense. And I have to say the finish goes on and on and on. Like it's really something else. Wow. Yeah.
It's kind of reminding me a bit of, a mechanic's garage. You've got oily rags and overalls and petrol, and it's and it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Wow, that's very good juice, man. So while we're enjoying this, I'm probably going to pour a third dram for myself. But in any case, in the meantime, if you don't mind, could I ask you a couple more questions? Oh wait, actually, you know what? Let me go back to the comments here. So Connor has a fun question. Connor Norton says, what's the most unique recast that you have ever done for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society?
That is a really good question. I think one of the really important things when we're looking at our additional maturation is we're trying to match the right type of spirit with the right type of cask. So you never want to go too out there. For example, I find that maybe sometimes the lighter spirits go much better in like a Spanish oak sherry cask than a heavier spirit like a Distillery 76 or something like that might go better in American oak. So there's always this kind of jigsaw puzzle that we're trying to put together to not just be incredibly interesting, but to be harmonious as well. I think it's probably some sort of Australian red wine type thing that we've had the most interesting results. And I love a really heavy oaky Shiraz. Okay. And we've filled some of those casks yet to come out, and wow, they're fantastic. All these red berries and just bursting with fruits. So they're probably kind of the strangest casks, or the least common casks as well, Australian wine casks, because they don't really travel too well either. So if you get a good batch, then you're in luck.
Typically, a red wine barrique that we would see in an additional maturation for society casks is usually Rioja, right, from Spain.
And quite often
most of the time,
quite often European oak as well. And quite often I'll get them a good char before we fill with the whiskey as well. So it becomes less about the original content. The original content sort of primes the wood and prepares it for the next filling. But you're not looking to, slosh a load of red wine out into the whiskey.
Right, yeah, sure.
So that kind of extra charring just means you've made this cask that's already to a really high wine spec quality, that's had a really good wine in it, and now you've charred it, and you're going to get kind of the best of both worlds. It's going to be really good for whiskey maturation, but you've got the benefit of the wine kind of priming the wood beforehand.
it's all about harmony, right? I mean, you can.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose there are some casks that are perhaps a bit more about power than sometimes harmony. I mean, I don't know if you can admit that, but in some of the things
No.
I've tasted, they're like such a body slam of the palate that, and you know, people like that and they want that. But yeah, I guess harmony is certainly a driving goal, and that certainly comes across. A great example is cask 46.104. That was additionally matured in the Sauterne barrique, and that just, I mean, it happened to be one of the casks we entered into the World Spirits competition in San Francisco, and it happened to win Best Independent Merchant single malt, you know, in 2021. And that's great. It's amazing. You know, we only had, you know, a few dozen bottles for everyone. So, of course, there was a touch of disappointment along with that accolade. But it just goes to show how innovative I think our barrel maturation program is, while still retaining that harmony and that integration that's so important with all of our casks. Yeah. So, and kind of on that note, there are a few different programs that you kind of always have going on, and you've touched on what we call the heresy line, which are our blended malts. Which, for those of you watching who may be new to the society, this represents maybe 2% of our overall volume. I mean, our heart is always the single cask expression, but it never hurts to have a little fun, you know? I mean, if Pip were here, he'd say, you know, we started this society to drink some really good whiskey and have a little fun in the process. And this heresy line of blended malts has been nothing but fun. From the very first one in Exotic Cargo, I think the most recent one we released was the Tar Pit. And I know we have at least two more. I want to say two more coming this year. So I'd love for you to touch on that a bit. I know you touched on it earlier, but then also, like this whiskey, we have other vatted, previously vatted, then recast into single casks that are hitting our outturns. If you could go into that as well.
Yeah. It's a complicated business, this whiskey stuff, isn't it?
I know. Sorry, I'm like babbling.
No,
must be the Smoky Maritime hit talking.
Yeah. There's so much to explain, but there's so much to explore and learn. Every day is a school day for me as well. So with the kind of small batch blended malts, like I said before, this is a chance to really be creative and to think outside the box a little bit. All of that range to date have been bottled at 50% ABV. So just to give a point of difference, in the spirits team, we refer to it as drinking strength. So the idea is that it is just, you can pour and go, and that's kind of what we think. But again, everybody would encourage everyone to experiment with a touch of water and see what they think. And really, what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at an expression each year that fits Big Peat and Big Sherry. They're categories that we're really into and really interested in. And with those two, we actually have kind of a Solera method of production. So taking inspiration from trips to Jerez or even Cognac and Armagnac as well, we'll always try and keep back some of the batch. So say we make a big batch of blended malt and we bottle 50% of it, the next 50% will be half of the recipe for the next one. So we'll add in, so we go 100%, we bottle the 50, the 50 that's left over gets topped up again, and then we bottle and we top up. But you've always got this ever kind of present maturing component that has been in there from release one kind of thing. And it gives you added complexity and it gives you a little bit of consistency, but not too much. So we've got that batch to batch variation. Then we're also just always working with different cooperages or breweries, for example, to try and push the boundaries a wee bit and look at different types of different directions you can take whiskey. So batch, I think it was batch 5, was called Old Fashioned, and
yes.
Yeah, so what we did.
You're touching on a sore spot here. That was the one cask that we could not get into the U.S. Because it's named after a cocktail, and the federal government would not have any of that. So we could not bring it here. I mean, I enjoyed it with you in the UK, and it was an awesome blended malt. But we couldn't get it here. But please go on.
Yeah, well, so we had tried some really nice IPA, additionally matured whiskies, but we wanted to see what happened if you left the whiskey in there much longer. So we teamed up. First of all, we got some fresh bourbon barrels from Kentucky. We then sent them to a local brewery that's only, I don't know, 20 miles, maybe less, from Edinburgh. And we got them to make a batch of their beer, which was called Old Fashioned. And it's very heavy on the orange. It's really hoppy, and it's bottled at a high strength. So it's supposed to evoke memories of that great cocktail. So they matured that beer in those casks. And then I think it was about 6 months that they had the beer in there, sent it back to us. And we were something in the region of 14, 15 months in the now seasoned IPA bourbon barrels. And yeah, it just, I think then I actually blended in a proportion of sherry matured whiskey as well to bring up this orangey cherry note. But yeah, that's just an example of how we're trying to play about with different ideas, working with different partners. It's brilliant to work with the local brewery on that. So yeah, we've got loads of stuff on the go at the moment that we'll see in future, where we've had a 14% smoked beer matured in heavily toasted new oak barrels, that we've now got whiskey kind of maturing away, and that's been 18 months in there now, and it will be, I would say, an imminent, one of the next releases in that range. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what we're trying to do with that experimental range.
What is that beer in Bavaria? It's like a Roche beer or something like that.
Oh yeah, I think is that one beach smoked? Is it?
That's like, it's super. I mean, it smells like sausage. Like
I think it's
in the pint glass. It's crazy. Very fun. Cool. Before we go on to the vatted part of the question, a couple of questions here from Daniel. Is the PX influence up front or more in the background? Do you think you could taste the PX from a blind tasting? I'm going to leave that to you. Roche beer, thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I think it's quite prominent. You get the syrupy sweetness, the figs and dates and raisins, and it's really syrupy. If I'm nosing that with my eyes closed, I'm imagining a kind of dark, oily, fruity syrup. So, I would say it's up there, and it punches back against the smoke pretty effectively.
I would agree. I think there's a lot of that harmony we were speaking of earlier, but for sure you can identify this as a PX for sure. And Connor asks, are there any unique non-whiskey spirits released in the pipeline for the U.S.? Non-whiskey, we got some stuff coming out. I think it's just finishing up being bottled now, and you guys can look forward to some cool gin and rum, and possibly even some Armagnacs before the end of the year. But that's, as Euan was alluding to earlier, it's very much up to the logistics. Logistics are a necessary part of this whole experience. So we'll see. For sure, you guys are going to see some gin and some rum before the end of the year. That should be really exciting. So Euan, what about vatted? And I understand we're kind of approaching an hour here. I kind of wanted to keep it to an hour because I know I'm carving into your evening. But if you could just touch on the vatted casks that we're starting to see. I think the first one we saw maybe was a distillery number 7 during the gathering in September of 2020, and now we've just seen a distillery number 24, and yesterday we released a distillery number 4. So can you touch on that a bit and the methodology behind that? Yeah.
Well, the 7 is a good place to start. So that came out for part of the gathering in September last year. And our idea behind that was trying to, similar to this Distillery 10 small batch, was trying to make a whiskey that more members could share with each other at different chapters around the world. So we took bourbon barrels from Distillery 7 and married them in sherry butts. And then those sherry butts were bottled individually. So sort of the same as we do with single casks, although they contained more than one cask in there. But then that just meant that it was a special release that we had created not from scratch because we didn't distill it, but you kind of know what I mean. We had more of a steer in creating this product, and then we could have it in tastings in Japan and in Germany and in the UK, like all at the same time. Yeah. So that was the concept behind that, and it was really well received. And then there's also a kind of different take on these whiskies. So supply is hugely varied in the industry. We fill 1,000+ casks a year into our own wood. So that supply is slowly building and will be coming through in future. The most common way you purchase whiskey is just as single casks, and we will taste them and monitor them and bottle them as and when they're ready. And the other kind of route that we can get hold of some delicious whiskey is where the seller sometimes decides, right, I want to measure how much whiskey I'm selling. So they consolidate a group of casks and then put them back into the wood. So they've got an exact measurement of what they want to sell. They approach us with a sample saying, do you want to buy this? It's absolutely delicious. So of course the answer is yes. But right. It's not single cask, but we didn't want to turn that amazing whiskey down. So in these occasions with like the number 4 and the 24 that you've just released, we've then taken some of those casks, put them back together again, and then put them into our own wood, a variety of different bourbon, PX, Oloroso, just to try and make them incredibly different. And then we leave them again for, say, 2 years minimum. By that time, they've completely diverged again into having their own character. And what we then do is draw them off one at a time, the same as we do with single casks, even though they've had that kind of different process happen to them. But yeah, they're still completely unique. There's still a limited number of bottles left. And I think they're a really great addition to the whiskies that we're offering at the moment.
Yeah, and that's so you make this purchase and then you just create out of that one vatted purchase, you're creating 5 or 6 or 7 more very unique whiskey journeys through that recasting. And I look very much forward to seeing the subsequent bottlings from 24, from 4 that we have lined up for the coming months. And in addition to others, I think it's as you said, why would you turn down that amazing liquid just because it's not a single cask? I mean, at the end of the day, we want to put the best quality whiskey in front of our members, right? I mean, so whether it's born out of a single cask or, one of these unique situations where it's vatted and then recast, I mean, why not? At the end of the day, you're pouring an exceptional spirit for yourself, for your friends. and it's all good. Brett, no, you're not going to find anything else out. Today is all about this distillery number 10 small batch release. Jenna and I will be back on the channel tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time to divulge the rest of everything else. But yeah, right now it's all about this smoky maritime hit. More like a smoky maritime smash hit. I don't know how you do that.
It's big.
It's really good, man. Really, really nice. I mean, I had a few more questions, Euan, but we're coming up on an hour here, and I think I'd rather let you enjoy your evening. So maybe you can come back and see us again sometime. And
I would love that.
We can sit down and taste some other things.
Sounds great.
So for those of you who are interested in learning more about the society, please visit our website, smwsa.com. We can get you started on the whiskey journey. And every month we're releasing all kinds of really unique and expressive and really interesting casks. All thanks to this gentleman who joined us today. So, Euan, thanks again for joining us. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will see you. We'll see you again tomorrow when this cask and our other Islay expressions will be released at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So until then, Euan, thanks again, man. Love seeing you, and hopefully we'll get to share a dram in you like my twirl, a dram in person sometime soon. Slams.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everyone. All right, take care.